Hey there! Ready to fire up the deep dive engines? Let's take a closer look at Google Cloud's compute engine.
Sounds good to me.
We're diving into the world of virtual machines today, and you've already got some great material lined up with the Google Cloud documentation you shared.
Absolutely. It's a fascinating area.
It's like you're building your dream computer setup, but instead of a bunch of hardware, it's all in the cloud.
Yeah, the cloud changes everything.
Speaking of which, let's unpack the Create and Start a Compute Engine Instance guide.
All right, sounds good.
This guide is like the instruction manual for getting those virtual machines, the very building blocks of cloud computing up and running on Google Cloud.
It really is, yeah.
Okay.
It's like picking the perfect engine for your cloud-powered car. You got to choose what's going to make it purr.
Oh, I like that.
You need your app to fly. You'd want a compute-optimized instance. Got mountains of data to store. There's a machine for that, too.
Now, this guide doesn't just throw you the keys and let you figure it out. It walks you through creating a virtual machine from scratch.
It does, step by step.
But what's really cool is how much control you have. It goes
Mm.
super granular. You can customize operating systems, fine-tune the machine type, even dial in your security settings from the get-go.
It's true, the level of customization is impressive.
Okay, so choosing your machine type, it's a bit like walking into a high-tech garage, right? They've got these machine families, and it's way more exciting than picking out a family sedan.
Well, maybe not that exciting. But you're right, it is a lot like that.
They've got general purpose machines, which are like your reliable daily drivers. And then you've got storage optimized behemoths. Those are for when you've got data coming out of your ears.
Uh-huh. That's a good way to put it.
And don't even get me started on the compute optimized powerhouses. Those are like strapping your application to a rocket.
They're beasts.
And of course, you've got your memory optimized and accelerator optimized options, each with its own strengths. It's all about picking the right tool for the job. And luckily, the guide breaks it all down in a way that's easy to understand.
It really does. It's very user-friendly.
Now, speaking of picking the right tools, you highlighted a term that really caught my eye, shielded VMs. Sounds pretty serious, doesn't it?
You bet it is. Think of it like Fort Knox, but for your virtual machine. We're talking about layers upon layers of security features built to protect, especially if you're working with sensitive data.
Oh, okay. So we're talking serious security here.
Yeah, the guide doesn't mess around when it comes to keeping your data safe.
Now, even though these shielded VMs sound incredibly complex, the guide makes enabling these features surprisingly straightforward.
It does, yeah.
It even walks you through setting them up if you're starting with a basic image. You don't have to be a cybersecurity whiz to take advantage of these high-level protections.
Not at all. They've made it much more accessible.
And that's really key. The guide is clear and approachable even when it's diving into advanced concepts like security.
It strikes a good balance, I think.
Speaking of which, one detail that I found really fascinating was how much the guide emphasizes security from the very beginning. It's not something they tack on at the end. It's woven throughout the entire VM creation process.
Exactly. It's like building security into the foundation of your virtual machine, rather than adding it as an afterthought.
That makes a lot of sense.
It's much more robust that way.
And one of the ways they do this is through these shielded VMs. Remember those layers of protection we talked about? Well, they're powered by things like UEFI compliant firmware, Secure Boot, and VTPM.
Right, all those extra layers of protection.
You know, I know those sound like terms you'd hear in a high-tech thriller,
Maybe a little bit, huh?
but they basically act as extra layers of defense, making sure that only trusted software can run on your VM.
That's the main idea, yeah.
It's like having a highly trained security team guarding your virtual front door 24/7.
Exactly. You can sleep soundly at night.
And it's not just about, keeping those bad guys out. These security measures also help really ensure the integrity of your data, your applications. It's about building that trust factor right into your cloud.
Absolutely, yeah. It's like building a house on a solid foundation.
Now, we've been talking a lot about, building VMs from scratch, but the guide also dives into other really cool ways to get them up and running.
It does, it does.
Right? Like using existing images or even snapshots.
Right.
Think with it like cloning your VM.
Yeah, exactly.
Super handy for testing.
Yeah.
Or if you need to quickly spin up like an identical copy, say for disaster recovery or something. Snapshots are especially interesting because they capture the entire state of your disk at a specific point in time.
You do.
It's like having a rewind button for your virtual machine.
Exactly, yeah. You can just roll back to a previous state if something goes wrong.
Which reminds me, speaking of different approaches, we have to talk about container images.
Yeah, container.
It seems like they're everywhere these days.
They're all the rage.
And the guide touches on how they fit into this whole compute engine world.
Right, because they're a key part of the puzzle.
Absolutely. Think of container images like those self-contained travel suitcases.
Okay, I like that analogy.
They have everything you need packed inside to run like a specific application.
That's a good way to put it. They're self-contained units.
It's all like neatly organized and ready to go.
Exactly. Makes them incredibly portable, too.
Which makes them incredibly portable and perfect for deploying apps across, different environments smoothly.
Exactly. That's one of their biggest advantages.
And what's really neat is that Google Cloud lets you create a VM directly from a container image.
They do, using their container-optimized OS.
Yeah, the container-optimized OS.
It's really slick.
It's like ordering a pre-furnished apartment. Everything's already set up and optimized for running those containers.
Exactly. You just bring your application and you're good to go. It's very streamlined.
So not only do you have options for creating virtual machines from scratch, images and snapshots, but you can also spin them up directly from container images.
Right. It gives you a lot of flexibility.
Google Cloud is serious about giving you, options, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. They understand that one size doesn't fit all when it comes to cloud computing.
Right.
But hold on a second. Before we get too far ahead of ourselves, I think we need to rewind a bit and touch on another really important aspect of creating a VM networking.
Oh, right. Networking.
Yeah.
Networking, yeah.
It's one of those things that can feel a bit like navigating a labyrinth, you
Yeah.
know?
It can be a little bit tricky.
But the guide does a really good job of kind of demystifying it.
It does, yeah.
It really emphasizes just how much control you have over your virtual machine's network settings. You get to decide like which virtual network your VM lives in and even specify a subnet.
Okay.
It's kind of like assigning it an address within a specific neighborhood in your cloud network.
I see.
Right, and that's really important because it dictates how your VM, talks to other resources, both within your little cloud city and the outside world.
Makes sense. So you can really fine-tune how it all connects.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the cool part is Google Cloud gives you that flexibility to either, stick with their default networking settings, or if you're feeling adventurous, really dive in and customize things to your liking.
Okay, so you've got options.
Exactly. You always have options.
And speaking of control, one thing that really stood out to me in this guide was this whole concept of instance groups.
Oh, yeah. Instance groups.
They're like the VIP section of your cloud setup, offering more control, more scalability.
You're right. They're really powerful, especially when you're dealing with multiple VMs. It's like, imagine you're running a website, right? And suddenly it's flooded with traffic.
Let's say, because you mentioned a really cool podcast.
Exactly. You need more servers, like right away, to handle all those eager listeners.
Of course. You don't want anyone to miss out.
Exactly. And that's where instance groups come in. Instead of, scrambling to manually launch a bunch of new VMs,
Right.
an instance group can automatically spin them up for you, ensuring your website stays online and everyone can listen to the podcast without a hitch.
That's amazing. So it's like having like a team of stagehands working behind the scenes.
Exactly.
Making sure your show runs smoothly, even with a packed house.
Exactly. And the best part is you can choose between like managed and unmanaged instance groups.
Okay, so what's the difference there?
So it's like the difference between, say, hiring a professional catering service for a big event
Right.
or trying to organize everything yourself. Right. With managed instance groups, Google Cloud takes care of all the details.
Oh, wow. So it's like hands-free?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
We're talking auto-healing, load balancing,
Right.
even scaling things up or down based on demand.
Wow. That's a real time saver.
Huge time saver.
Now, the guide doesn't dive too deep into like the pricing,
Right.
but it does mention the Google Cloud Pricing Calculator. And let me tell you, that tool, that is a lifesaver when you're trying to get a handle on your cloud expenses.
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's like having a virtual accountant who helps you understand how all those different choices you make, like your machine type, your storage, even those networking decisions we talked about, how they all factor into your overall bill.
That's super helpful.
It really is. You can experiment, try different configurations, and find that sweet spot between, performance, the features you need, and of course, keeping your cloud budget happy.
Gotta keep that budget happy for sure.
Absolutely.
It's amazing how much thought goes into designing these virtual machines.
It really is. There's a lot happening under the hood.
The create and start a compute engine instance guide, it really opens your eyes to all the moving parts.
It does. It's like you get to peek behind the curtain of a magic show,
Yeah.
and suddenly you appreciate all those intricate mechanisms that made all the illusions possible.
It's true.
Uh,
It's fascinating.
It is. And, just like a good magic show, this guide kind of leaves you wanting more.
It does a little bit.
Remember all those advanced features we only briefly touched on? Things like preemptible VMs, sole tenant nodes, custom machine types,
Yeah.
and of course those powerful GPUs.
Right, right. There's so many more rabbit holes to go down.
Exactly. So, consider this deep dive a taste of what's possible with Compute Engine.
I like that.
We've explored the core concepts, for sure, but there's a whole universe of features waiting to be discovered.
It's an exciting world out there.
It really is. The guide, it provides a roadmap, but the journey of building truly powerful, scalable, secure applications in the cloud, that's all you.
That's a great way to put it. Well, thanks for taking us on this deep dive. Until next time.